Let's follow the adventurous trail of Robert William Service, poet and novelist, often nicknamed Bard of the Yukon. Born at Preston, in England, the young boy is sent to a village, Kilwinning, in Scotland, to his paternal grandfather, in order, in fact, to ease his mother's burden of consecutive pregnancies. The young boy is joyfully pampered by his four paternal unmarried aunts who greatly stimulate his taste for reading, especially the Scottish bard Robert Burns, and they encourage his early skills of versifier. The poet expresses his talent as early as his 6th birthday, during which he recited with much spirit a grace revisited by his care. From his happy childhood in that picturesque small Scottish village, Robert kept during his whole life his biting humour and his Scottish accent, of course. At 9 years old, Robert joins back his parents in the big industrial town of Glasgow, where he had much difficulties to find his place among his 9 siblings. The teenager starts a career of disruptive student, getting expelled from school. However, he is a voracious reader of adventure novelists such as Stevenson, Borrow, Thoreau, and Bret Harte. Robert, in fact, dreams about becoming a sailor. Instead, he has no other choice than following his father's example. The young man starts to work as a bank clerk for 6 long years, and that routine and bureaucratic existence displease him greatly. During his spare time, Robert takes interest in theatre, practicing rugby, cricket, and even getting involved in politics. But his rebellious spirit, always driven by an intense fire for freedom, makes him give up every activity. In fact, Robert is pining for faraway adventures, rocked by his assiduous readings, and finally he saved enough money to achieve his dream. Robert lands in Montreal at the age of 22, with only $5 in his pocket. The young man has just enough to buy a train ticket, allowing him to cross Canada with immigrants looking for a better life in the Canadian Great Plains. The young man decides to step foot on Vancouver Island, more precisely at Cowichan Bay, where he works in farms as ploughman, an existence far from his teenager's wishes of cowboy's life. But the other main aspiration of the young man is also to write poetry. But he is still awaiting the inspiration triggering his talents. During his wandering youth, Robert is implicitly guided by the reading of his master in life, the Scot Stevenson, who had also traveled until San Francisco years before. So, when Robert heard enough from his farm jobs, he decides to hit the road again with his bindle stiff in order to try his luck under the Californian sun. For 2 years, Robert's irrepressible thirst for discovering new horizons, combined by his unconscious search for his way in life, takes the aspirant poet through many states of the United States, all the way down to the Mexican border. Hunger regularly compels him to accept all kinds of trades: tunnel digger, dishwasher, orange picker, sandwich man, and even tutor in a fancy house in San Diego. Considering the sad vacuity of his pitiful existence of vagabond, without having found yet his destiny, Robert chooses to return to Cowichan Bay, where he finds a job as cowherd, then as shopkeeper in a ranch trading with natives. For months, Robert is leading a carefree existence, far away from any constraints or desire for freedom. At a ball, Robert falls in love with a school teacher, daughter of Vancouver's first mayor. Robert's life's goals change dramatically. The young man works to enter the University of Vancouver in order to acquire a better social position, wishing to be worthy of her. Sadly, in spite of mutual promises, the unsteady woman breaks up the engagement to the advantage of another wealthy suitor. Reaching 30, heartbroken and miserable, Robert is at a crossroad of his life. He then remembers his Scottish bank reference letter, and under a sudden impulse he enters the Canadian Bank of Commerce in Vancouver, trying to apply for a steady job. Surprisingly, Robert is hired immediately and starts working in Victoria's office, then in the one of Kamloops in British Columbia. Few months later, Robert heard that the bank is looking for volunteers being able to leave for the Great North offices. The offices open during the gold rush time. Robert applies with the secret hope of discovering the midnight sun and the aurora borealis beauties he read about by the past. Transferred in Whitehorse, the special atmosphere of the wild, solitary landscapes covered by snow half of the year, deeply refreshes Robert's soul. And then the epic tales of the old diggers finally lights the poetic sparks, awaking his versifiers' true talent. Robert writes and self-publishes his first book of poetry to offer as Christmas gifts for his friends. But destiny decided quite differently. Robert's service publisher is under the spell, filling the innovative topics and the entertaining rhythms of the Yukon ballads, such as the shooting of Dan McGrew or the cremation of Sam McGee. Thousands of copies are sold in few months, and gaining a growing fame well beyond Canadian borders, Robert is quickly nicknamed the Bard of the Yukon by the literary critic, the Canadian Bookman. The new celebrated poet of the Great North is then appointed to Dawson City, where he is progressively earning a relative financial security from his copyrights, enough allowing him to resign from the bank and to devote himself entirely to his true passion, writing. At Dawson City, Robert rents his famous log cabin, built at the epic time of the gold rush, a few meters away from the one where Jack London lived. Inspired by the serenity of the place, having an overwhelming view over the river, Robert writes his first novel depicting a story of the gold rush, The Trail of '98. Later adapted into movie like many of his poems. Once his last book ended, the search for new inspirations takes again Robert on the wide roads of adventure, looking for discovering this time the East Coast, from New York to Louisiana and Cuba. Then, weary of his wandering way, Robert decides to visit his parents, who had emigrated near Edmonton in Alberta. Parents he had not seen for 15 years. At his mother's farm, Robert feels again the irrepressible call coming from the Great North's wild horizon, which is already missing. So Robert decides to return to Dawson City, but this time by the road taken by the very first prospectors, the Yukoners' Road. By this way, Robert wants to prove strongly his legitimacy as gold rush poet, even if he did not take part to this epic time. The daring man starts 3,200 kilometers of an unbelievable and dangerous journey, taking place partly by foot, by stagecoach, steamer boat, and with his famous canoe, paddling on the northeastern rivers. A journey starting from Alberta, going through the Arctic Circle, to finally reach his Dawson city home, where he writes a new book of poetry. The first part of Robert Service's intrepid adventures depicted in my biographical novels ends after this last amazing journey across Canada.